like big books and I kinda... Oh, sorry, didn't see you there. Big books. A lot of people say they are intimidated by them. But if you are, then you have been reading the wrong big books all along. I've selected a list of 10 big chunky books for you. Books that will grip you from the first page and guarantee that you will fly through them as if they were 200 pages. As always, all the books I talk about are down below in the description section. Let's get into some big books. Our first book of today comes in at a whopping over 1200 pages. It is an absolute mammoth of a classic and it is one of the best revenge tales ever written. Imagine this. You are about 19. You have been offered the job of your life. You are about to marry the love of your life and everything is going great. Up to the point that some quite jealous men decide to frame you for a crime that you didn't commit. You're arrested and taken away to a forgotten deserted island prison to rot for the rest of your life. And that is just the beginning of The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas. Yes, Alexandre Dumas, of course, the famous author of The Three Musketeers, has written so much more. He was an absolute champion of French literature and The Count of Monte Cristo is possibly his best book ever written. Yes, it is a classic, but not a classic as you think you know them. It is historical fiction, it's an adventure story, but most of all it is about a great hero who's going to get revenge. And I will say, if you pick up a copy, do make sure that it is in unabridged version. You truly want the entire story spun out over 1200 and some pages. It never bores. It reads really quickly and at times is even a page turner. So don't go for shorter abridged versions because revenge is a dish best served cold, unabridged, and translated from French. The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas is our first absolute mammoth. The next one, with its 900 pages or so, is a lot shorter. It is often said to be one of the best novels ever written. It has again a historical setting and it is a love story. This is of course Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy. Now there is so much to say about this book, so let's start at the beginning. All happy families resemble one another, but each unhappy family is unhappy in its own way. This book has some of the best main characters ever written. Tolstoy presents us with 3 different couples, very different personalities, and they are excellently written and ever so detailed. Each of these characters has their own arc and their own story, but all of these stories are masterfully interwoven with each other. And the lives of these 6 main characters creates a very vivid, very realistic and very detailed picture of how Russian life must have been at that time. A 19th century Russian society filled with gossip and scandals and celebrities and courtly politics. And in fact, these characters are so well written, are so masterfully created, that I found Anna, the title character, to be one of my least favorites in the end. This book is about a lot, but in the end it is all about life. Written by a man who loves life itself. And reading this book will make you do so as well. Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy. Our third book is a short one, only 700 and some pages. It is a book about a madman and a mad, almost obsessed pursuit of something unknown, something that's out there, a whale. You can call me Ishmael, because this is Melville's Moby Dick. Now, people have mixed reactions to this book, and I get it, because here's the thing with Moby Dick. You can read it in several ways. Moby Dick can easily be read as a whale encyclopedia. After reading this book, you will know all about whales, their habitats, their mating rituals, what they feed on, how they live, their physiology, you name it. You will know everything there is to know about whales and whaling. And in fact, if you get again a nice unabridged copy, you'll get some whaling illustrations to boot. But this book is more than just about whaling. This book is full of symbolism and allegories. It is basically a warning that we as men are tiny, puny, insignificant, and should never, ever be as arrogant as Ahab and take on nature. And if you take a closer look, hidden in between all of the whaling facts are references to other great works of literature. There are references to the tales of Narcissus, Oedipus, Prometheus. And don't be fooled by that veneer of adventure story. The writing in this book can be serious, it can be violent, it can be very aggressive. At other times though, it is very tongue-in-cheek funny. Just like the whale, it can't be caught and apprehended overnight. Reading Moby Dick is a journey. Yes, a journey of 700 something pages, but also a journey of discovering what Melville and this book is all about. I will easily agree that this book might not be for everyone, especially if you don't like whales. Although, in the end, perhaps this book is exactly for people who don't like whales. Moby Dick by Herman Melville. And for our fourth book, we're going down in page count again. My version has only 600 pages or so, but it comes with some biblical proportions. Yes, it is a story about two families, but in fact, it is a retelling. It is a retelling of all of those biblical stories that we know. Adam and Eve, Cain and Abel. We might not be in Eden itself for this one, but a bit more to the east. This is East of Eden by John Steinbeck, and it is an absolute masterpiece. East of Eden is a modern retelling of the book of Genesis. It is set in California in the Salinas Valley, where farmland dominates the landscape, and it tells the story of two families. And here's the clever thing about East of Eden. On the one side, it is an almost biblical, philosophical, thought-provoking, deep kind of book. But on the other side, it is a page-turning, almost salacious romp of a book. It never bores. Despite being a historical, biblical, philosophical retelling of the book of Genesis, it reads like one of those magazines you find at the hairdresser. I actually had a lot of fun with this book, which was something I did not expect beforehand. And even when it gets into those really philosophical and dark corners of the book, it does so with a twist. For me, East of Eden is one of those almost perfect novels. Yes, it has some flaws, but they are very minor. The book can get a bit verbose at times, but again, that's Steinbeck for you. You'll get beautiful and very detailed descriptions of the Salinas Valley, and you'll know all about the landscape and the setting of this story. Could it have been a tad shorter? Perhaps, but it never, ever gets boring. East of Eden by John Steinbeck. The next one is without a doubt the oldest book in the list, and it comes in just shy of 600 pages again. You've absolutely heard of this one, you probably have read it already, and if you haven't, then this is your sign. This is a story about a man who angered the gods, and because of that is going to have one long hell of a ride home. This is the Odyssey by Homer. Now, I am not going to talk to you about the Odyssey. You already know all about it. But let's talk translations. If you're going to read Homer's The Odyssey, then you'll need a good copy, a good modern translation. There are more than 60 translations out there as far as I know, and not all of them are as great. I personally am a fan of one of the most modern translations of The Odyssey, and that's by Peter Green. What Peter Green does very well is, while on the one hand translating The Odyssey into a very modern, very accessible English, he still really stays true to the almost oral and poetic nature of this book. Peter Green translated the original poem line by line, which preserves the integrity of it. Yes, it doesn't really have a meter, which is very difficult to do if you're translating from an ancient Greek to English, but it stays true to what Homer was trying to bring, and that's telling a story. Another excellent translation, and probably one of the most known and best sold ones, is by Robert Fitzgerald. His translation is a common modern translation from somewhere in the 60s, I believe, and while it doesn't really maintain the rhythm of a poem, he just translates it into prose, into a story, it is still one of the standards for schools and students to use. So if you're looking for just a run-of-the-mill, very accessible, very entertaining translation, then Robert Fitzgerald is another great way to go. Finding the right translation for you is almost as epic a journey as the Odyssey itself. So let's leave it at that for now. The Odyssey by Homer. Now let's up the ante again, all the way up to 1,000 pages, and it is the first contemporary book on the list. The year is 1806. England is at war with France, and magic is about to return to London. This is Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norell by Susanna Clarke. Now you might know the name of Susanna Clarke from that other book, the book that was my absolute favorite of last year, which was Piranesi. Well, this is a whole different kind of beast. Yet again, it is another excellent read. This book is, again, just like Piranesi, a bit strange. On the one hand, it is an historical fiction. It reads like a Dickens, like a Jane Austen, and it gives this very detailed image of England during the Napoleonic Wars. It really shines in its historical setting. It feels very well researched, and it tackles problems that era coped with. The problem of class, how they looked at different races, gender issues. It is all in there. On the other hand, however, it is a fantasy book. It is about magic and magic users. All of a sudden, it is about magic and the study of magic and how it can solve societal problems. But then it starts to go wrong, and magic is also about the dark arts, and this book has it all. And this is my one criticism of this book, which I absolutely love, that it sometimes tries to be everything at once. And while in most parts of the book it absolutely succeeds in that, there are some sections that I thought, well, less social criticism and more dragons. Still, I absolutely love this book. I absolutely love Susanna Clarke's writing. It is descriptive, it is intelligent, it is fun to read, and I cannot stop recommending this book. If you loved Piranesi, if you love historical fiction, if you love fantasy, if you love something different, then do read Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norell by Susanna Clarke. Let's dive all the way back to about 600 pages, but stay contemporary. Another historical setting and fantasy book, but this one is a criticism about colonialism, imperialism, and the use of language and culture as a tool of domination to do just that. This is, of course, Babel by R.F. Kuang. When I started reading Babel and I was just a few chapters in, I knew I was in trouble. How do you review a book you already feel and think so much about? Because Babel brings a lot to the table. First of all, it is a book about language, about translation, about culture. R.F. Kuang, who started off as a translator herself, absolutely shows her mastery and her knowledge about language, about syntax, about how words are formed and languages come to be. And in fact, if you love things like dialectics, like the etymology of words, then this book is a treasure trove of annotations for just that. But Babel is of course also about politics, about colonial imperialism. It shows us what was wrong with the world back then and also now. But it also asks us some very, very dangerous and difficult questions. Because if you know what's wrong with the world, what are you willing to sacrifice to right those wrongs? It is a memorable story, a story about culture, about heritage, about sacrifice, revolution, and all of these things are just packed into 4 tiny student characters. It is almost, and people will get mad at me for this comparison, but this book is almost Harry Potter when Harry Potter had less silly magic and more dark and deep and brooding dark academia themes. I absolutely loved Babel, and if you have not read it, I absolutely recommend this book to anyone who wants to listen. It is one of the best dark academia books out there, which at the same time criticizes all that's wrong with the genre. It is one of those books that will live in your head rent-free for a long time, and I absolutely love it for that. If you haven't already, do give it a try. Babel by R.F. Kuang. Now, back to the classics and back to about 800 pages. This book is a murder mystery. This book is a courtroom drama. But this book is also a bit of an erotic rivalry with some very strange love triangles. We are back in 19th century Russia, and this is The Brothers Karamazov by Dostojevski. And don't let the murder mystery bit fool you. This book is not light reading. It is some deep, thought-provoking philosophical treatise on social circumstances hidden as a murder mystery. What Dostoevsky does at the core of this book is take one question. How do you live your life in the best way? And then he creates three brothers who answer that question in very, very different ways indeed. And in fact, this is not a book about plot. No, this is a book about recognizing yourself in one of the three brothers and absolutely not liking what you see. In my opinion, this is one of Dostoevsky's best books ever. And the reason for that is in his earlier works, he already told everything there was to tell about his position on Russian nationalism. He already bored us to bits with all of his thoughts on religion. And finally, he talks about man itself. What it is to be human, about the human condition, and how we as humans are in fact walking contradictions. It almost feels that he had finally done what society expected from him, and now he could enjoy himself and write the book he always wanted to write. And The Brothers Karamazov goes deep. This is one of those books you can spend evenings on end in a cafe, drinking and discussing and debating. It brings a lot to the table and there is a lot to talk about. Far more than I will ever be able to cram into a short review. So don't be intimidated, but go out. Give it a try. If you love Russian literature, if you love the historical setting vibe, if you love a good philosophical, thought-provoking book, then The Brothers Karamazov is absolutely one of the best you'll ever find out there. Sigmund Freud said that The Brothers Karamazov was the most magnificent novel ever written, and who am I to disagree? The Brothers Karamazov by Dostoevsky. Then the shortest book in this list, just shy of 500 pages, and another contemporary beauty. Another family saga that absolutely broke my heart. This is Pachinko by Min Jin Lee. Pachinko follows 4 generations of a Korean family all the way from their life in Korea up to the moment they go to Japan in search of a better life. It spans all over the 20th century and it is absolutely beautiful. It is an absolute tragedy to triumph story, but at what cost? And first of all, from a history perspective, I love this book. I did not know a lot, let's say anything about Korean history, about Japanese history of that area of the world, and I found it absolutely fascinating. I learned things. But of course, it is far more than just a history book. This book is both fictional and a true story at the same time, which makes the characters some of the most unforgettable characters ever written. They just come alive out of the page at you, and their story is so heartfelt, so emotional, that it is almost painful to read. The magic in this book lies in the switching of perspectives. At the one hand, you have these beautifully written characters with their very personal stories, but on the other hand, you almost zoom out to more geopolitical problems, society problems, things that are going on in the world. And this almost continual switch between those two perspectives makes for some masterful prose. Min Jin Lee's writing is probably the most concise and the most crisp and clean of all books in this list. No word is redundant, no character is too much. Although it has an historical setting, it is a story about migration, about culture clash, racism, and it feels very, very today. If you don't want to pick up one of those big chunky classics, then do pick up Pachinko. It is very accessible, it reads very easily, but it packs so much beauty into those 500 pages. An absolute 5-star read from me, Pachinko by Min Jin Lee. And our last contemporary book of today, just shy of 600 pages, comes with a classic link. When Charles Dickens wrote David Copperfield, he in fact wrote about institutional poverty, about children being the victim of a society that could not care for them. Now, when he did so, he wrote it in Victorian England. But today these problems are still existing. So Barbara Kingsolver wrote Demon Copperhead. Now, personally, Personally, I would not go as far as to say that Demon Copperhead is a retelling of David Copperfield. Although David Copperfield is an absolute inspiration for this book, there is so much more to take from it. Demon Copperhead is the story of Damon. Damon is a young kid somewhere in West Virginia in the United States, and he's, as it's called, trailer trash. He's a child of teenage parents with an alcohol addiction, and from a very young age he knows his worth in life. He hears other people call him a redneck, a hillbilly, trailer trash, all of those words, and he wants to say to those people, I can hear you. He knows that people think that he is worthless. And in the end, he starts to think in those same terms about himself. He's a worthless nobody, a demon with red hair, hence the name Copperhead. So yeah, he is one of those boys of a lost generation. Yet despite all of the hurt and pain and anger and rage and drugs and alcohol, Damon is still just a young boy who wants to love and be loved, who wants to be held and feel safe. Things that his mother is not able to provide. And don't be mistaken, this book delivers a serious punch to the gut. It is harsh, it is emotional, at times beautiful, and it will slowly tear you apart page after page after page. Yes, you will chuckle at times, yes, you might cry at times, but I absolutely guarantee that you will love it all the way through. Barbara Kingsolver's writing is beautiful, it is very well crafted, it is evocative, it is sometimes very aggressive and harsh when it needs to be. It is a very well written book. Contemporary, but with a touch of the classic, Demon Copperhead by Barbara Kingsolver. And now I want to hear from you. Are you intimidated by big books, or do you love them? Have you already read one of these books, or do you have a recommendation for me? Let me know down below in the comments, and we'll talk big chunky books some more. In the meantime, thank you for watching. You being here and watching all the way through means the world to me. Do leave a like, do subscribe. In the meantime, if you are in need of some more excellent classic recommendations, all you need to do is watch this video.